Thank you for tuning into the third episode of Shorewood Public Library's podcast, The Shorewood Stacks. I'm Lisa Quintero, Young Adult Librarian.
Hi, my name is Nick Barron, and I am a patron and sometimes volunteer.
In this podcast, we'll be discussing library news, what we've been reading, listening to, watching, and upcoming virtual events, and more. Before we get into the library news this week, I have a question or comment for Nick from listener Kate. Kate says, if Nick has been on Roll20 or something similar and knows tips for running a map, I'd love to hear them on a future episode. My D&D buds and I have been using Google Spreadsheets and Discord in conjunction, and navigating maps is kind of tough.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this with having done a lot of gaming online in the last couple of weeks. So there are three main applications that people usually use for maps. One is Roll20, another is Fantasy Grounds, and another is Tabletop Simulator. Roll20 is really easy to use. That's the most popular, and it has a really easy built-in map building utility. There's Fantasy Grounds, which is a little bit more involved, and then Tabletop Simulator actually allows you to build a 3D environment, but it's also the least popular. All of them have built-in dice rollers and cool, fun stuff like that. But they also are a mix of free and for pay. So there's that going for it and going against it. But they are all neat applications. But I didn't use any of those for any of the gaming that I've done in the last couple of weeks. Instead, just like you, I use Discord, but I draw all of my maps by hand. So what I did was I took my hand-drawn maps drawn on graph paper, and I took pictures of those maps with my phone. I then cropped each of those maps in Photoshop and turned them into little tiny JPEGs. As the adventure would progress, I would just throw the image of what was happening at the time up in the Discord chat, allowing my players to be able to see exactly what was in front of them at the time. The nice thing about doing it that way also gave me the opportunity to really limit what they saw. So essentially, they would only see what room they were going into and the room that was behind them. They would have to scroll back through the chat to kind of remember what was taking place, which gives it kind of that old school feel where back in the day we used to hand draw the maps based upon what the dungeon master told us. So yeah, I think it's that is right now my preferred way to do it. Eventually, I'll mess with some of these more involved applications, but they are absolutely not necessary. If you've got a phone and the ability to crop an image, then yeah, you'll be able to just do it that way.
Cool. Well, thank you for answering Kate's question. If you have questions or comments for our hosts, please send them to shorewoodstacks@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Shorewood Public Library, Twitter at ShorewoodLib, our website, shorewoodlibrary.org, and on Podbean at shorewoodstacks.podbean.com.
Library news.
All right, so I am talking to our Assistant Director, Emily, from the Shorewood Public Library, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how curbside pickup is going to work starting on April 27th.
Yeah, we're pretty excited to be able to start getting library materials in people's hands again. I know people have been kind of anxiously awaiting when they can refresh what they've got at home to watch or to read. So we're ready to get started with it.
Cool. So how exactly is it going to work?
Yeah, so this is a whole new world for us. So pretty much all of us on the library team have been working for the last week to try to figure out how we can make this work for patrons. So the basic premise is a lot like what you've been doing if you've been ordering food from restaurants for curbside pickup or from other stores. So you will give us a call during our open hours, and you'll talk to our usual staff, and a librarian will help you locate items that you want. You can look ahead of time in County Cat and see if your items are here on the shelves at Shorewood, and have some things in mind, or you could even call and say, like, give me something good to read, or like, give me your favorite movie, and we'll find those things for you. You can ask for up to 5 items right now. That's our limit. And we may explore expanding that if we can, but we're going to stick with 5 to begin with. So you can ask us for up to 5 things. And when you call to make your request, you'll also schedule a time slot for yourself to come pick up your items. So you'll give us a sense of when in the next few days you can come. You can probably come as soon as the next day. We can't really guarantee same day pickup right now, but you'll be able to schedule a time within a half-hour time frame. And then when you arrive, you will give us a call, and a clerk is going to check out your stuff for you, and then we'll drop it outside the door with your hold shelf slip so you can identify that it's yours, and also your due date receipt so you know exactly when your items are due, and you'll just come grab it.
So, will you need your library card in order to check stuff out? Like, will you need to bring the actual physical card with you when you come to the library?
Yeah, good question. So technically you won't need to bring the physical library card because you're not going to be like, we're not going to scan it. You're not going to really see staff at all. So we want to maintain some distance here. So patrons are just going to stay outside. So basically when you call to request your items, we will need your library card number, or we can look you up with your name and just have you verify a detail about yourself so we know we've pulled up the right library account. And so that's at that point, we'll make sure that your card is in good standing and that we can check items out to you. We're going to be really pretty lax. McFliss has already done some great things. They renewed a lot of library cards that had expired from September 2019 and onwards. If your card expired before then, we should be able to give you a cushion and let you still use your card and have it expire probably at the end of June. So we can address that at that time. If you happen to have fines on your card that are over $5, typically that would block you from checking out. But right now we're going to be using our judgment. A lot of people prefer to pay in person versus paying on County Cat. We know people aren't working and maybe feeling the financial strain right now. So we're not going to force you to pay every cent of your fine at this time. We should be able to give a little bit of leniency and let people check out even if you have a little bit of money on your card and fines. But we're probably going to take that as it comes. So you can kind of go into it with as much knowledge as you have. Like if you know you have fines, let us know when you call and we'll try to figure something out to help.
That sounds good. What about digital cards? Because I know, like right now in the interim, we've been issuing some digital cards. Can you check out items with those?
Yeah, so you technically can't. We need to make that a full access card before you can check out physical items on it. But we're hoping that we can do that for you kind of through the window. So we do need to see like a photo ID in order to make that digital card a full access library card. And so I'm hoping that when this comes up, if it comes up, we can work something out and have people just show us their photo ID through the window. If you've been to Shorewood Library, you know that we have a nice big window that looks right into our staff area. One of our clerks is going to be stationed there doing some work. And so they should be in a good position to see your ID through your window. If you can kind of walk right up and hold it, we should be able to do what we need to do to make your card full access and let you check out. It won't have your signature on it. So we'll get that, at a later time when you can actually come into the library and provide us a physical signature. But that's okay. We can extend that leniency again. Like I said, with fines and expiration dates and all this, we'll try to find a way to make it work for people.
Okay. And what about social distancing measures? So like if I come to pick up my hold and there are other people there, are there going to be like markings on the floor kind of?
Yeah, good question. Us? Yeah, good question. We know, especially here in Shorewood, we have tons of people. If the weather's nice, which hopefully it gets nice again, we have tons of people who bike and walk and get to the library that way and maybe aren't driving. So, you aren't in kind of the safety of your own vehicle. So you might be waiting outside for your items. And we are going to have some marks on the sidewalk to help people understand the distance they need to maintain between others. So we'll start with some chalk marks for that. And if that proves to be a good measure and useful to us, then we'll make those a little bit more permanent. Have our friends at the Department of Public Works help us out, maybe with some signage or something a little more permanent than chalk, which will wash off in a rainy day. But we'll start with that to try to help give people some guidelines so they know kind of where to stand and wait for their items. And then people who drive too, obviously, like I said, if you drive, you're kind of in the safety of your car. But we'll have some parking spaces designated for you to pull into. Our usual ADA or 15-minute parking spots right near the front of the library are going to be designated for where you can pull up to wait for your items.
So if I forget like all the instructions before I pull up, is there going to be a sign there to kind of remind me of what I'm supposed to do?
Yes, there sure will be because of course, everyone's going to be like, wait, where am I supposed to call? Where do I do it? How do I do this? So yes, there will be signs on the windows, on the doors. nice and big as we can make them, helping you remember what number to call when you arrive and kind of what to do. And then, of course, you'll get to a staff member as soon as you call, although give us patience if we don't answer right away. we will, help remind you of like, okay, where we'll put your items, and don't forget to kind of stand a little bit distant from other people if there's others out there, etc. So yeah, we'll help you through that. Don't worry.
And what other measures are we taking right now to kind of maintain people's health? Are we quarantining books when they come back? What are the people who are handling the books doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know there's been definitely some concerns about that in the library community. And that's, part of the reason that libraries closed too. But we have had our book drops open this whole entire time, and we've been receiving returns the entire time. So what we do with those items is we're following guidelines that have established that COVID-19 is no longer contagious after on hard surfaces after 72 hours. And so most of our materials, the outside of them is a hard plastic non-porous surface. So you think of like the shiny cover on books or the plastic cover of CDs or DVDs. The inside is obviously of books is more porous, and that the virus lasts even less time on that type of surface. So we use that 72-hour guideline, and basically a staff member will remove items from the book drop. That person is using gloves and a mask to keep themselves safe and also keep the items from getting contaminated should that person be carrying the virus at all. So we remove items from the book drop, and we basically let them sit on a cart. We don't touch them again for 72 hours. After that time has passed, then we check them in. And then we handle them as we normally would. We organize them onto carts and get them back to our shelves. So you can feel comfortable that anything you're getting from pickup has already been handled really carefully and should be absolutely free of any type of germ that would be contagious or infectious. So you can feel pretty confident. And then staff that are in the building, we're absolutely using precautionary measures, washing our hands lots, hand sanitizer when we can't wash our hands, keeping really distant from each other. So that's part of why we'll have minimal staff in the building, is so we can have people, not working in really close proximity to one another. Mm-hmm. And then being really careful when they handle materials as well. So using gloves if that's appropriate, but really what we've heard from the North Shore Health Department is washing hands, washing hands, washing hands. So that's what we'll be doing. And we actually do that a lot already at the library because we touch stuff all the time in normal life. And so we actually are all pretty good about doing that normally. So I think you can feel pretty confident.
Yeah, I think I wash my hands like 50 times a day sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Between like touching shared like computers to like all the books and stuff that we touch. Yeah. We definitely, we've all already had really dry hands before this started.
So can people who aren't Shore residents request items from us?
Yeah, anyone with a valid Milwaukee County public library card can request items from Shorewood, and same Shorewood residents can go to other libraries in the county that are doing curbside pickup and use their service as well. That's kind of the only way you'll be able to get stuff from other libraries right now. So we're hopeful that people will kind of drive around if they need something from a different library, or if they want to come here to our library and they don't live in Shorewood. That's totally fine.
Cool. And then you said that they could call during open hours. So are hours going to be the same, or are they going to be different?
Yeah, they're going to be a little bit different. So we're planning to be open for 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. So we've got some morning hours in there. So Mondays and Wednesdays will open at 9 a.m. We'll be open till 2. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be our evening hours. So those will be from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then Fridays and Saturdays are kind of going to be our middle of the day hours, where we'll open from 10 to 3. We're hopeful that those hours will kind of meet everyone's needs right away. But obviously, if we feel like demand is too high or we're not really reaching people, then we can always tweak those hours.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about how we can get stuff from other libraries, or we can't get stuff from other libraries right now unless you go to the library directly.
Exactly, yeah, you can't place holds in County Cat right now or on the County Cat mobile app, which I know is like heartbreaking for so many people, because that's how we love to use our library, and we're so used to that being one of the greatest things about our library system, is being able to place holds and get stuff pretty quickly. But there's no delivery between libraries really right now. And since some libraries haven't had their drops open and some libraries haven't had any staff in for the last 6-7 weeks, it was really just too difficult for us to enable interlibrary holds right now.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. And then I think the last question that I have is we've had some patrons asking about how holds work. So they have stuff on holds from before, are they going to be receiving their items, or how is that going to work?
Yeah, so we do have quite a number of items that we've received in the last few weeks in the very minimal deliveries that we've gotten from the library system. And there are holds, and those were basically holds that were activated or were filled before all the libraries closed. And so they're here. They came from other libraries. They're here for you. We are absolutely going to honor those, especially now that we can give people the opportunity to come pick them up. So we're going to start checking those in, and you won't get your normal hold shelf notifications because that isn't kind of turned on, but you will hear from us. So we're going to check items in and reach out to people who have items already on our hold shelf to let you know that we've activated it. And of course, if you no longer want it, you can just tell us, but we're thinking most people are going to want their items. So we'll be doing that. And I don't know how many we have, but we'll try to get through those.
Okay. Yeah. And if your hold wasn't activated before the closure, I'm guessing that you'll just have to wait until everything reopens.
Pretty much. Yeah. We definitely know that we have some people who are waiting, who had holds on items that are here at Shorewood, that are on our shelves right now, and that they want to pick up here at Shorewood. So we can also fill those holds. There aren't a ton of those, but we know that we have those already in the system. So we will work on filling those holds too. And so that's going to be kind of it. So yeah, if you had a hold on something from before when everyone closed, you might not get it, but you might be surprised and you might get it. It kind of just depends on the circumstances. It's a little bit experimental right now.
I'm sure everybody who gets the surprise will be very happy.
Yeah, I think so. No one's going to be mad, right? Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on with us and explaining how this works. I'm sure we'll probably get some more questions as it goes along, and people can always email questions to shorewood@mcfliss.org.
Yep.
And then they can always call us again. Was there anything else you wanted to add about curbside pickup?
I will add, since you mentioned emailing, you can absolutely email us questions to our shorewood@mcfliss.org email address, but you can't email requests. We can only take phone requests right now. Again, that's kind of just to manage demand. We're going to have pretty minimal staffing so that we can keep everyone safe distance away from each other in the building and minimize, people who are traveling to work. So we can't take email requests, but definitely email us questions. And maybe we can have a little curbside chat every week on the podcast to give updates if we need to.
Sounds good.
Mass information out there.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be getting, people asking how to limit items to just Shorewood on the county cat and things like that. So we can definitely help you with that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on, Emily.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Lisa.
From the stacks.
So I have a special guest here today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Curran, and I am a circulation clerk at the Shorewood Public Library, which is how I know Lisa. I've been working there for 2.5 years, and I am a longtime reader and enjoyer of books, being an English major several times over, a former English teacher turned theater teacher, and happy to talk about books with Lisa.
Yeah, you're also a Shorewood resident, right?
Yes, I moved to Shorewood 22 years ago.
So, what have you been reading lately, Carolyn?
Recently, I finished 2 different nonfiction books, which I got from the Lucky Day shelf at the library. One of them is written by a psychotherapist. Her name is Lori Gottlieb, and it's called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. And the other book is by Malcolm Gladwell, and it's called Talking to Strangers.
Cool. Could you give us a brief description of those? How about we start with the Gottlieb book?
Yes. So Lori Gottlieb's book is kind of 3 things. It's anecdotal information about her life and how she became a therapist. It's also stories of her work as a therapist and various patients. And she goes through the therapy experience that she had with some particular patients. And she protects their identity. It gives you a sense of what they were working on in therapy. And then the third part of the book is herself as a patient and her therapist and what she explored as a patient.
So what made you pick this book up?
I found the cover and the title really appealing. It just looked like something that was going to be very personal. And I really like personal narrative. I like memoirs a lot. I got on a kick of reading memoirs when I started working at the library and saw them so frequently in the new nonfiction section, which the clerks at the front desk often straighten up, and also on the Lucky Day shelf. And it seemed like it would have a memoir feel about it. And then I recently got into a book club that had selected this as their April read. And so I decided to pick it up.
Yeah, you mentioned that your book club was going to be on Zoom. How did that go?
Yes. So sadly, that went very, very poorly. I've never done Zoom before, and I have an older MacBook Pro, and I have a feeling it had more to do with my technology than Zoom itself. It seemed like most of the members, there were 14 people attending, and most of them were on an iPad. But my screen kept freezing and my audio kept going in and out. So I had to leave it and I didn't spend the whole evening in the book club because of the technical problems. But I'm pretty sure that was just me.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of these new technical tools that we have available seem to work really well and some not so well. But I guess we just have to try what we can, right?
Yeah, I've been on Google Hangouts playing a trivia game every Sunday night with the neighbors. There's about 8 households on it, and that's worked great. So I was dismayed that Zoom for me did not work because my Google Hangouts experience has been very positive.
Cool. So is there any particular anecdote from the book that you really liked?
Yes. So the thing that I liked stuck out to me the most, I guess, is after college, she found herself being an assistant in the television industry out in Los Angeles because she just thought that she would get interested in writing and script writing, screenwriting, because she was an English major and really liked stories as a college person. So she found herself an assistant to someone at a studio in Los Angeles and was on the set when they picked the cast for ER, and George Clooney became George Clooney. And because of her interest and background, she got herself elevated, not really to a writer for the show, but she was often consulted and had a hand in the writings of the show.
That is really cool.
Isn't that cool? And she also was in the room when they auditioned the cast members of Friends.
That would have been interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I just found her tale of her beginning job after college, which clearly was an extremely interesting one, but how she went from that through various stages in her life to be the person that she is now.
So what format did you read this book in? Was it a physical copy or did you read an ebook?
I read a hardcover copy of the book. An ebook is not so much a thing for me. I really like holding the book in my hand. I like to feel it. I like the smell of it. I like the tactile experience of that.
Totally understandable. So let's move on to the Malcolm Gladwell book. Tell us what that one was about.
Yeah, so that book was fascinating. So I'm familiar with Malcolm Gladwell from, looking at, the New Yorker that he writes for a lot and the Times and whatnot. And he has so many titles. But I recently got exposed to him through a podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. He was one of the guests. And he talked about this book, Talking to Strangers. And this book had also passed through my hands many times in the library because so many people were checking it out. And then I saw it on the Lucky Day shelf as well. So that led me to pick it up, flip through it, and read a chapter kind of randomly. And that drew me in. So then I checked it out and read it. And I just found it a fascinating study of how we stereotype people, how we believe stereotypes inaccurately depict people, but also how we lean on them for our information, and our information is almost always inaccurate.
Yeah, I was reading the description and it did sound really interesting. Could you repeat the name of the podcast that you heard about it on? You got a little garbled there.
So the podcast where I learned about Malcolm Gladwell's book is the comedian Conan O'Brien, and it's called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
That sounds like fun. I used to love watching Conan O'Brien. I didn't know he had a podcast now.
He's in his second season of it now.
So what was your biggest takeaway from the book? Was there anything in particular you didn't know before that you felt that you learned from it?
Yeah, so something that fascinated me is how much we depend on facial expression and body language to determine whether we think someone is genuine or not, and how so many studies from sociologists show that we do this as human beings and we are almost always wrong, yet we rely on this when things are very critical. And he looks at cases of, people who committed, terrible crimes like Jerry Sandusky and the Bernie Madoff case, the murder involving the girl Amanda Knox, who was innocent, but, presumed so guilty for so long. And that we draw all these very inaccurate conclusions based on how we stereotype our perception of people. And even though it's always wrong, we continue to do this again and again.
Yeah, I remember going to a training on communication, and the presenter said something like only 7% of communication is verbal and the rest is all body language and tone, which is just amazing.
It is. And kind of connecting this to the other book I read, Lori Gottlieb, I said early in her career, she met the cast of Friends because she was in the room when they auditioned for that show. So there's also a reference to a particular Friends episode in this book. There's a sociologist who studies the facial expressions in a particular scene, and they describe the character Ross when he discovers his sister is dating Chandler and all the facial expressions he has, and how those kinds of facial expressions are what we identify with in expressing surprise and anger and then, happiness, but how they are incorrect in real life. But when we see that in a character in TVs and in the movies, we respond to that as, yes, that's what sadness looks like. That's what anger looks like. That's what, untruth looks like, and that's what truth looks like. But in real life, that's not how it works.
Yeah, a lot of people have different expressions on their face when they feel those emotions because not everybody expresses emotion the same way. So it's so interesting.
Yeah, and then they talk about this one sociologist who went to this South Pacific island, indigenous community, and in some cases found that there are just typical ways that human beings express certain emotions, but other ones not at all.
Yeah, that's really cool. Was there anything else you learned about on Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend?
The thing I love the most about that is, while he's incredibly funny, but it's not so much, him just being funny and the celebrities he interviews. He always is so very personal and genuine and exposing of himself and what he perceives to be, his flaws and how he wants to connect with other people, especially in who are in high profile, kinds of lives, and how they've experienced success and what sort of personal foibles, get in their way. I just find that really interesting and engaging. He's so easy to relate to and connect with.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. So, Carolyn, as we wrap up National Library Week, what are some things you miss about the library as a patron or as an employee?
What I miss most about the library is seeing the people and talking to strangers who are not so much strangers because, they're some people we see so frequently that they become part of the fabric of our lives. But I really miss the being at the desk and the interacting with people, just chatting about, little things in your life, little anecdotes that come up when you're checking out a book, and maybe you say something about, that book, and then they say something else, and that leads to this whole other personal interaction that has nothing to do with that book. It's just connecting with other people.
Yeah. No, I miss that a lot too. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about the books you've been reading with us, Carolyn.
Yes, it's great to talk to you too, Lisa, and thanks for doing this.
If you are interested in reading some of the books that Carolyn was talking about, either Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell or maybe You Should Talk to Somebody by Lori Gottlieb, both of them are available in physical format at the Shorewood Public Library, and they are also available on Libby. It looks like Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell is available as both an audio and an ebook on Libby, and Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody is available just as an ebook on Libby.
Virtual events.
Art Cart online. We know you miss our weekly art cart, and we miss you. Every Wednesday, Miss Susan posts instructions for fun art projects you can make at home. Check our calendar and social media pages for instructions.
Join New York Times bestselling author Kelly Yang on Instagram Live at KellyYangHK every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 2 to 2:30 p.m. CST for free online writing classes for teens.
Virtual book fests are continuing this week, so check out our blog at shorewoodlibrary.org for more information.
This podcast is available for streaming on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean. If you have any questions or comments for the hosts, email us at shorewoodstacks@gmail.com. Until next week, thanks for listening, and be well.
The Shorewood Stacks is produced by Lisa Quintero and Nick Barron, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The title of this song is Ice Flow and can be found on incompetech.com.